No, indeed. Well, right now we're going to welcome in for Golf Today Roundtable Golf Digest contributor Shane Ryan and Brandan Porath, who is the co-host of the Shotgun Start podcast. Shane, I want to start with you. Do you buy this argument that forget about just whether or not this crowd is a factor in the Ryder Cups, specifically at Bethpage, do you think the crowd is going to be as overwhelmingly vocal pro-US as everyone assumes? Because there aren't exactly a shortage of Europeans in the tri-state area either.
Yeah, I think it will be overwhelmingly toward the U.S. I think this is an American venue. You will have more Europeans there than Whistling Straits because we don't have COVID anymore. Well, we still have COVID, but not in the same way. But you will, I think, have a very, very vocal crowd. And it was interesting listening to you guys talk. I think one element of the home crowd in the Ryder Cup that doesn't get talked about enough is that there is no chance for professional golfers to acclimate to playing on the road the same way an NBA team or an NFL team would. This only happens for them once every 2 years. And so I think you could say, well, it's just like any other sport. You've got fans yelling at you, but these guys are professional athletes. However, these professional athletes don't have the chance to get used to it the same way that a normal sports team would. And also, another thing I like to throw in is these fans are closer than any of those other sports, right? There is a sideline on the NFL. There's a sideline in the NBA. Here, these people can reach out and touch you. They can be 2 feet from your face while they're insulting your family. It is a different level of stress that I think in the Ryder Cup is more pronounced than anywhere else.
Brendan, you must be looking forward to getting to Bethpage because it'll be quieter than all your kids at home, right?
Absolutely. It'll be a nice reprieve. Maybe still have to babysit a few folks, but it'll still be quieter. I would quibble with the notion of a home court advantage when it comes to the Ryder Cup. I do think the crowds have an impact, but in American sports, home course, home court, home field advantage, I think where we generally see it is with officiating, right? The block in the back on the home team might get picked up versus the block in the back on the away team. That's an easier call to make. And we see that in the NBA quite frequently. I think with golf, there is the mental component for an away team dealing with hostile jeers so close to them. But in terms of home field advantage in American sports, I think officiating is where that usually bears out.
Brandan, between the two captains, who's won the preliminary? Is it Keegan with the mansion and the wine and getting the guys out to Napa? Is it Luke getting the lads to New York early and practicing with VR headsets? In your mind, which captain has won the preliminary?
It's such a peripheral debate, Damon, but I know this is what we do. We've got 10 days to go, a lot of hot air to fill. I mean, the European Ryder Cup team is sharing literal hot air tweets and videos of with Tyrrell Hatton on the tee. But I would give it to Luke Donald. I'm giving everything preliminary to the European side. Why? Because he's been the captain before. I think he's a relatively unemotional, steady hand. Some people motivate and can burn with doing it in a library voice, in a quieter way. That's not to say he's unmotivated or unmotivating, but I think everything they've done since Rome and really since before Rome, when you had that tumult of Henrik Stenson leaving, of this new generation coming in, has been perfectly executed to win an away Ryder Cup. And in terms of the captain's room, the captain himself, they've absolutely won the preliminary setup.
Shane, what do you think? Because I could make an argument that maybe the Europeans erred by not allowing its flagship event, the BMW PGA Championship, to factor in who makes that team or not. Should the Europeans have waited till 2 weeks before the Ryder Cup, held one pickoff, so you don't have Alex Noren cracking jokes and holding a walkie-talkie as opposed to wielding 14 clubs?
Yeah, I don't think Alex Noren would have made the team even if that had happened a month ago. But I do agree this is sort of nitpicking little things. And I think, history is written by the winners. And so when you see these stories like the VR headset, you can go, well, if the Europeans lose, that was a desperate, pathetic maneuver. It showed how scared they were. And if they win, you say, oh, my God, what a stroke of genius, what foresight to do that. And that happens every year. I mean, I heard Eamon say earlier that, hey, look, the away captains are always making mistakes, and that's why they lose. Well, I could just as easily say, the home crowd, the home course advantage makes these captains look stupid in hindsight. And so all these things, we can argue about them. I don't think they matter that much. And it's also sort of impossible to interpret them until you have the final results. And even then you're still guessing and kind of, making all these things fit the narrative that pertains over the years.
Brandan, let's move off the Ryder Cup for just a moment. I know you're desperate to talk about something else. A couple of days ago, Greg Norman posted that he has now formally left LIV Golf, which everyone thought he'd actually gone 7 months ago when Scott O'Neill took over as the CEO. His post suggested that he considers this a great success, that his reputation is burnished leaving this position. Do you agree with him?
Well, his self-testimony speaks to his self-regard, I think, that we've seen on display the last few years with LIV. I didn't know he had not formally left. I was wondering what he's formally been doing the last 7 months if he hadn't formally departed. But it felt like an opportunity to come to the center of the arena, or his own arena, I suspect, and just doff his cap one more time and give a wave to the folks, because we'd kind of forgotten about him. Let's be honest. He'd been off the stage completely after being such a fixture, probably the way he liked it, whether it was negative commentary, positive commentary, or otherwise. He was in the center of the arena, even if, people weren't viewing his product on the weekends. He was a part of the discourse and a part of the conversation. This felt like an opportunity just to kind of strut. Maybe there was some formal document, formal date, clearly, of when he was officially exiting, and he wanted to prance into the center of the arena and doff his cap one more time. I don't think you could say it was a success. I think, he got it off the ground. And as we've said before, he was probably the right sort of shameless individual to put up with it, to be able to take the arrows, to be able to not worry much about the lack of acceptance amongst any kind of peers or credible mainstream discourse. But I don't think you could call it a success given where it is in terms of mainstream acceptance right now.
Well, Shane, let's keep the LIV conversation going. Bryson DeChambeau, how do you handle him next week? He went 1-0-1 with Scotty in 4-ball at Whistling Straits. Should Keegan run that duo back, or do you split those two alpha males up so the Europeans don't get extra giddy and extra pumped up if they take those two major champs down?
Yeah, you're right. You're always afraid of the 2004 Tiger and Phil thing happening again, where it puts a target on your back. No, what I think is that Scotty Scheffler partnered really well with Russell Henley at the President's Cup. And I know the President's Cup is not the Ryder Cup, but he hasn't been good with Sam Burns. So I would expect Scheffler to play with Henley. Then in terms of Bryson, I mean, you can put him with anybody. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, hitting the ball 350 yards is going to play well no matter who you're with. I don't think the LIV thing is going to make a difference in terms of who he gets along with. So, I don't really have any insight on who the perfect person would be. That stuff is sealed behind the CIA level vaults of the stats guys. But really, I think he could go with anybody.
Of course, the golf ball that he uses could be problematic for other people on that team as well. Brandan, while Damon keeps bringing us into a Ryder Cup conversation, I'm trying to steer you away from it here. Lanto Griffin had an interesting comment tongue-in-cheek to Keir Dixon Sunday after he kind of helped secure his tour card or put himself in a better position out of Napa, when he jokingly said, "I wish Scotty Scheffler wasn't here." Is there a little subtext to this kind of FedEx Cup fall where guys are out there playing for their status, there's fewer cards out there, and then here you get 10 of the Ryder Cup team whose status is permanently secured. They're coming in, they're taking up spots in the field. You won't see much of them for the rest of the year. But is there an argument that these guys should be less apparent in the fall, those who have actually secured their status for next year?
Well, if that's the argument, then you're laying bare that these are not the same products. These are not, that might be the same sport, but these are not the same products. And I made the analogy before it. This felt like going to the zoo and all the animals were in the same enclosure, because they weren't, you've got the mule, which is Ryan Armour's own term for, I guess, the rank and file or lower class player in there. And then you had some of the sharks and the lions of the top tier Ryder Cup players. They are PGA Tour members. Maybe this will not be a fall, they're not going to be on display unless it's a Ryder Cup kumbaya, which I guess, sort of speaks to what is the purpose of this event. You had Lanto Griffin saying his goal ahead of the week was to make himself eligible potentially for Japan. I don't think that's a calculus for Scotty Scheffler as he starts the week of the Pro Tour, or Ben Griffin, or Colin Morikawa at all. But absolutely not. It's in the end, it's a benefit to the sponsor. It's a benefit to the event, even if their purpose there is clearly for the later and subsequent Ryder Cup. it's a benefit to have them there. And then, the second class or the players struggling to make their card or jockeying for position can resume their chase in the fall. But maybe that's what this fall series will end up. I mean, it's always sort of been that way, but in formal written language, it is sort of a minor league season to move yourself up.
We've got a World Golf Hall of Fame member standing by. Real quick, Shane first, then Brendan. Who wins the Ryder Cup next week?
Always the home team, U.S. in a blowout.
I will go with a little closer margin, but I'll take the U.S. as well.
Good stuff. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday. We'll see you next week, gentlemen. Thank you.